Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is David Baldridge. I'm a professor of organizational behavior, and I've been at Oregon State for roughly 20 years. Rather than go in depth on one research paper, I want to provide a broad overview of my research, and in particular focus on practical takeaways that I think you'll find useful, and focus on people with hearing disabilities in particular. Session takeaways. So one point I want you to take away is that people with disabilities are an enormous or huge group. They're fantastically diverse and they're sadly underutilized. Another key point is that people with disabilities are best seen as non-standard bundles of ability, meaning that they can't do some things that we normally associate with an employee. For example, they can't hear or see or speak the way other employees do. But that's not to be confused with being less able, just differently able. But because of that, point 3, they often need to approach their work differently. So they need to craft their tasks, their job, their careers in order to tap into those abilities. And accommodations and technologies are often essential to tapping into those abilities. With a rapid rate of technology change, that's something that changes on a year-by-year, if not a month-by-month basis. Yet, people with disabilities often do not request the accommodations that they need, and that's a major focus of the talk today. My research broadly, I've always been fascinated by individual differences, so how we're similar and different from one another, and how that impacts our organizational or employment experiences. A lot of my research is focused specifically on disability and careers and employment, and a big subset has been on disability accommodation, in particular why people don't ask for the accommodation that they need and are entitled to. So throughout my research, or for background, I should start out by explaining that I became deaf in my 30s, and getting my PhD, joining academia, and adapting or focusing on this line of research was part of my own career adaptation or my own career crafting. As part of that, I've collected survey data from thousands of people that have disabilities. I've done 100+ in-depth interviews, and my colleagues and I have analyzed data from tens, if not hundreds of thousands of other people with disabilities using government databases in the US and Canada, in Germany in particular. So to see all my research articles, please take a look at my College of Business website, and we'll also follow up this session with key references. I want to focus now specifically on accommodation to tap abilities. And I'll start with the case of Stephen Hawkins. So, differently abled versus less able. So Stephen Hawkins, if you think about him as an employee, he can't speak, can't stand up, can't walk, can't do a lot of the things that we assume when we design a workplace and we design jobs. But he's also brilliantly able. So through crafting the tasks that he did, crafting his job, crafting his career to focus on his brilliance and his abilities, and also using technology and accommodation, we were all able to benefit from brilliance that would have been lost without those adjustments. Background data, roughly there are 1.3 billion people worldwide who have a significant disability. 37% are working age in the United States between 16 and 64. However, as we talk about pushing retirement ages back, that number or that percentage goes up rapidly. In terms of labor force participation, it's roughly half for people that have a disability, and unemployment rates are roughly twice as high. So these are a sample of research articles on disability and accommodation, and I'll share a few key takeaways from 4 different research articles. So I'm compressing 25 pages into a sentence or two. But the first one was a survey study of people who are deaf and hard of hearing in the workplace, and found that roughly 60% of them withheld requests for needed accommodation on a weekly basis, and 85% withheld requests for accommodation at least once each year. A literature review showed that this is likely driven by complex personal and normative assessments, particularly about compliance. If I ask, will the accommodation actually be provided? Will it be fair to me? Will it be fair to other people? Will it impact my reputation somehow if I ask for accommodation? And is it normal in my workplace to admit that you need help? So those things together shape decisions to request or not request accommodation. A follow-up survey study of 229 people who have hearing disabilities found that the cost monetarily to an organization, as well as imposition to others, led to perceptions about negative consequences if someone asked for an accommodation, and therefore people chose not to ask. The fourth study looked at age in particular and found that younger employees withheld requests for disability accommodation more frequently, but that the impact of age was weaker when disability was more severe and when disability onset was earlier in age. Okay, I want to focus now on the case of deaf and hard of hearing persons in particular. So I want to look at the diversity within that one group, and before I do that, remind you that hearing disabilities are just one of many, many different disability types that are in the workplace and need to be understood and accommodated. But within hearing disabilities, key attributes are age at onset. So some people are born with their hearing disability, other people acquire them early or middle, late of their career. And then severity matters also. Some people are profoundly deaf, other people it's fairly mild, but quite often it varies frequency by frequency. So for example, someone might hear low sounds normally, while they don't hear high frequencies at all, or profoundly deaf in the higher frequencies, or the opposite. But the perception for people in that group is often that they are not aware of their own hearing loss because they still hear some frequencies so well. So they might perceive that people don't speak clearly anymore because they're missing certain parts of speech, or have trouble hearing children but not adults, women but not men, for example. So it's very confusing for them. Another common perception is hearing well in quiet settings, but not hearing well in noise. So a very complex diversity. Also, you have differences in tenure or how long someone has been coping with their disability. So for some people, it's brand new and extremely disoriented. Other people, it's something they've been working with for years or decades, so they know exactly what they need. And then rate of change. So some people go to sleep with, quote, normal hearing, and they wake up profoundly deaf, very traumatic. Other people, the rate of change is so slow that they're not aware of the change in their ability to hear. And then variability. Some people, their hearing loss is the same day to day at work. Other people, it varies a lot from day to day, and that adds complexity also. So all those different attributes coming together impact the employee's identity, their social groups, their communication and accommodation needs, and their careers and employers. An example there would be someone who is born profoundly deaf is much more likely to use American Sign Language, and so their accommodation at work would be sign language interpretation. Someone else who acquires their hearing loss later in life, where it's less severe, they're much less likely to know sign language. So they're looking for ways to boost what they can hear and/or written communication like captioning. So in terms of challenges at work, people with hearing disabilities that we've interviewed, anything related to communication can be difficult, but phone calls in particular and meetings are areas that come up again and again. For phones, a lot of people benefit from captioned phone calls. Other people benefit from shifting more of their work to email. In terms of meetings, people report that hybrid meetings, mixing in-person and Zoom, for example, are the most difficult for them. And interestingly, a lot of people are increasingly finding that Zoom is their best place to have meetings because they can combine seeing all the people in the room on a screen all at once. That helps with speech reading. They often can also stream the sound in via Bluetooth to their cochlear implants or hearing aids, creating really great sound quality. And it's easy to add captioning that they can see, either professional captioning or automatic captioning via Zoom. People also talk about isolation, stress, fatigue, and part of that is related to impression management. But the challenge is, now I need to do my work differently, I need accommodation, but I still want people to see me as a capable professional. And it's very challenging to balance that. For stress and fatigue, a study in Europe found that a lot of people were aware of their stress and fatigue before they understood that it was because they had lost some of their hearing. And one way to cope is to isolate, but that has negative career consequences. Tips for deaf and hard of hearing employees: request needed accommodation, make it easy for other people, tell them what you need specifically, help them find those resources, and focus on things that are beneficial not just to you, but to your employer as well. Craft your tasks, your job, your career to tap into your abilities. Use the best available technologies. I've talked about a few already. Be a patient educator of others, manage your own energy, stress, and attitude, and avoid isolation. In particular, stay active in groups of people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Tips for employers: understand your employees' abilities first and foremost, but also their needs for assistance. It might be sign language interpretation, it might be assisted listening devices, it might be captioning or written communication. Have ongoing conversations about performance, communication, accommodation needs, as well as inclusion and isolation. Encourage task, job, and career crafting in order to tap into that employee's abilities, and create hearing-friendly work environments. So often background noise, a lot of people talking at once, and lighting are the two things that need to be managed. And that's not just for the employee's office or workspace, but it applies to where you meet and where you have your social events. And then encourage accommodation requests. The best thing is making them automatic, so there's no need to ask for ongoing accommodation needs, and make it so there's never a risk in asking for something that you need. I want to leave you with 5 resources. So the first is the Job Accommodation Network. So any questions related to accommodation in the workplace, JAN is a place to go. For employees who are deaf and use sign language, they may find the National Association for the Deaf, NAD, to be a very useful organization to be a part of. For people who acquire hearing loss later in life who don't sign, then Hearing Loss Association of America is a very large and great organization. Diglo is just an online catalog that I direct people to because it has a lot of devices for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And lastly, my email address. If I can be of help to you or your employees, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. So thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate your time.